How did your sibling ruin your life? My older brother Liam was supposed to protect me. That's what big brothers do, right? Instead, he systematically destroyed every good thing in my life, and I didn't realize it was intentional until it was too late. It started small when I was 14. My diary would mysteriously move from its hiding spot. Private conversations I'd had would somehow become family dinner topics. "So I heard you have a crush on Tyler from biology," my mom would say, while Liam smirked across the table. I thought I was just bad at keeping secrets. When I was 16, I finally made the volleyball team after training for months. 2 days before our first game, the coach pulled me aside. Someone had sent her screenshots of an Instagram account under my name, full of cruel comments about teammates. I'd never seen that account before. I lost my spot on the team, and the friends I'd made wouldn't speak to me. Liam said he was sorry that happened to me, even helped me try to figure out who did it. Senior year, I got into Cornell, early admission, full scholarship for bioengineering. My parents cried with joy. Liam hugged me, said he was proud. 3 weeks later, Cornell rescinded the offer. They'd received an anonymous tip about plagiarism in my application essay, complete with links to an obscure blog where my essay had supposedly been posted 2 years earlier. The blog was created just days before the tip was sent, but the damage was done. I'll never forget sitting in my guidance counselor's office as she showed me the evidence. The blog used phrases I'd never write, but it was close enough to my style to be believable. My other college applications were already submitted with that same essay. Every single one rejected me. Liam drove me home that day, bought me ice cream, told me everything happens for a reason. I ended up at community college while he went off to Yale. The pattern continued into adulthood. When I finally transferred to state school, my boyfriend of 2 years suddenly dumped me. He'd received Facebook messages from my account saying I was cheating. I hadn't sent them. When I got my first real job at a biotech startup, anonymous complaints about my inappropriate behavior started flooding HR within a month. Nothing specific enough to disprove, just enough to make them suspicious. I moved across the country to escape whatever curse was following me, changed my number, deleted social media, started fresh in Seattle. For 2 years, things were actually good. I met Aaron, got promoted twice, felt like maybe I'd finally outrun my bad luck. Then last month, Liam showed up at my apartment. Just happened to be in town for business, he said. We had dinner, caught up, he met Aaron. He seemed genuinely happy for me, even apologized for not being a better brother when we were younger. 3 days after he left, my boss called me into his office. Someone had emailed the entire company from my work account at 3 a.m., accusing him of sexual harassment and attaching fabricated screenshots of text conversations. I was fired on the spot, legal action pending. Aaron found the email on his phone that night. He tried to be supportive, but doubt crept into his voice. "How does this keep happening to you?" he asked. "Maybe you should talk to someone about self-sabotage." That's when something clicked. Every disaster in my life had one common factor. Liam knew about the good thing right before it imploded. He knew about Tyler, about volleyball, about Cornell, about every boyfriend, every job. He was the only constant. I hired a private investigator with my last savings. What he found made me physically sick. Liam had been keeping journals since we were kids, documenting his experiments on me. He called it Project Zero, a detailed plan to ensure I never surpassed him in any way. Every sabotage carefully planned, every method documented. He'd been keylogging my devices for years, had access to all my accounts, my emails, everything. The PI found more. Liam had been in therapy since college. His therapist's notes, obtained through a contact, revealed he'd admitted to managing his sister's life to prevent her from abandoning the family like she always planned. He told the therapist I was unstable, prone to self-destruction, that he was actually protecting me from myself. The worst part? The therapist believed him. Evan wrote papers about delusional sibling syndrome, based on Liam's descriptions of my paranoid beliefs that someone was sabotaging me. I confronted Liam over video call yesterday, recording everything. He didn't deny it. "You were always going to leave us all behind," he said calmly. "I could see it. You're too smart, too ambitious. Mom and Dad would have been devastated. I kept you close, kept you humble. You should thank me." When I told him about the PI, about the evidence, he laughed. Who's going to believe the girl who's been fired from every job, lost every relationship, blamed everyone but herself? Even Aaron thinks you're self-sabotaging. He was right. I went to the police with everything. They said sibling rivalry wasn't a crime. The cybercrimes unit said proving he'd hacked my accounts years ago would be nearly impossible. My parents think I'm having a breakdown. Aaron left last week, said he needed space from my drama. But something strange happened this morning. I got an email from an encrypted address with the subject line, "You're not the only one." Inside were files on 3 other women, all with brothers named Liam, all with eerily similar stories. My hands froze on the keyboard as I read those words again. 3 other women with brothers named Liam, who'd lived through the same hell I had. I clicked on the first attachment and Paula Brock's story filled my screen. She was from Portland, 31 years old, and her brother had destroyed her shot at medical school. The details made my stomach turn. He'd hacked her email and sent racist messages to the admissions committee from her account. Then he'd broken up her engagement by creating fake dating profiles with her photos and sending the links to her fiancé. The keylogging software, the fake social media accounts, even the timing of his attacks matched mine exactly. Her file included screenshots of text messages where her brother talked about keeping her from getting too successful. I opened Nina Cartwright's file next and had to stand up from my desk. She was 28, lived in Denver, and her story started in high school just like mine. Her brother had sent naked photos he'd doctored to look like her to every college she'd applied to. He'd gotten her fired from 3 jobs by calling in fake complaints about drug use. The worst part was a text message she'd saved where her brother actually used the words, "keeping her humble," after she'd lost a promotion. My hands were shaking as I clicked on the third file. Cecilia Doyle from Phoenix was only 22, but her life was already ruined. She'd lost 2 careers before she could even start them. Her brother had called her nursing school claiming she had a criminal record for elder abuse. Then he'd sent emails from her account to her husband's employer, accusing him of stealing, which got him fired and destroyed their marriage. The person who'd sent these files had been watching, documenting, tracking all of us. I typed a message back to the encrypted address asking if we could talk on the phone. My fingers kept hitting the wrong keys because my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The reply came in less than 2 minutes with just a phone number and the words, "Signal app, 1 hour." I grabbed my phone and called Angelo Porter, the PI who'd uncovered Liam's journals. He answered on the second ring, and I forwarded him all 3 files while explaining what I'd received. He said he'd check court records and public databases right away to verify these women were real. He'd call me back within the hour with whatever he found. I couldn't sit still after hanging up. My apartment suddenly felt too small as I walked from the kitchen to the living room and back again. I grabbed a notebook and started writing down questions for whoever was on the other end of that signal number. How did they find us? Why were all the brothers named Liam? How long had they been tracking these cases? Were there more victims they hadn't found yet? I made another list comparing the tactics used against each of us. Keyloggers appeared in every case. Fake social media accounts showed up 3 times. False criminal accusations twice. Hacked email accounts in all 4 stories. The patterns were too specific to be random. 40 minutes felt like hours as I paced my living room wearing a path in the carpet. I kept checking my phone even though I knew the hour wasn't up yet. Angelo hadn't called back yet either. Finally, exactly 1 hour after getting the signal number, I opened the app and dialed. The call connected after 1 ring, but the voice that answered wasn't normal. It was electronic, synthesized, clearly run through some kind of voice changer. The woman, I thought it was a woman, said she was a researcher who'd been studying family abuse patterns. She'd noticed our cases while looking through academic papers and court records. She wouldn't tell me her name, but said she'd been documenting cases like ours for 2 years now. She explained how she'd found us by searching specific databases. Therapy publications were the first clue since several of our brother's therapists had written about us without using our names. Then she'd cross-reference those papers with employment discrimination complaints that mentioned family interference. Court records for restraining orders helped her confirm identities. She'd spent months verifying each case before reaching out. She believed there was something bigger happening here but needed our cooperation to prove it. The similar names, the identical tactics, the way each brother justified their actions using the same language about protecting the family. None of it was coincidence. She asked if I'd be willing to connect with the other women and share evidence. We talked for 20 minutes and she gave me secure contact information for each woman if I wanted to reach out. After the call ended, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and started creating a timeline. Every major disaster in my life lined up perfectly with when Liam had information about my plans. The volleyball team sabotage happened 2 days after I told him about making the team during a family dinner. Cornell's rejection came 3 weeks after he'd helped me celebrate the acceptance. My boyfriend dumped me 1 week after Liam visited and met him. The biotech job complaint started right after I'd emailed my family about the new position. Every single time Liam knew about something good in my life, it fell apart within days or weeks. My phone rang 20 minutes later and Angelo's name lit up the screen. He'd already found court records for all 3 women, restraining orders filed in different states over the past 5 years. Paula Brock had sued her employer for wrongful termination in Portland, and the case documents mentioned family interference. Nina Cartwright's divorce papers from Denver included claims about fake messages sent from her accounts. Cecilia Doyle had filed 3 different police reports in Phoenix about identity theft and cyber harassment. Angelo said every single case matched the patterns in the files I'd received. The women were real, their stories were documented, and the legal paper trail went back years. I thanked him and hung up, then opened my laptop to compose an email to Paula through the secure address the researcher had given me. My fingers shook as I typed a simple message introducing myself and explaining how I'd gotten her contact information. I mentioned the encrypted email about not being alone and asked if she'd be willing to talk. The message took me 15 minutes to write because I kept deleting and starting over, trying to sound normal instead of desperate. After hitting send, I pulled up the video file of my confrontation with Liam from yesterday. His face filled my laptop screen, calm and certain as he explained his actions like they were reasonable. I grabbed a notebook and started transcribing his exact words, pausing every few seconds to write them down. "You were always going to leave us all behind," became the first line on the page. "I kept you close, kept you humble," went underneath it. "Preventing abandonment and managing your life," filled the next lines. Each phrase made my stomach turn, but I needed them documented word for word. The way he'd said protecting the family with such conviction, like destroying my life, was some noble sacrifice. I minimized the video and searched for Jeremy Blackwell's published articles online. The third result showed his paper about delusional sibling syndrome from 2 years ago in the Journal of Family Psychology. I clicked through to the full text, and my hands clenched as I read his description of a female patient who believed her brother was sabotaging her. Every detail matched my life, but twisted to make me sound paranoid and unstable. I took screenshots of each page, then opened them in an editing program to highlight the worst parts. The line about persistent belief in conspiracy despite lack of evidence got bright yellow highlighting. His claim that the patient showed narcissistic injury when confronted with personal failures got orange. The conclusion stating she needed long-term treatment for her delusions got red. 2 hours passed before my email notification chimed, and Paula's name appeared in my inbox. Her message was short but warm, saying she'd been waiting 3 years to find someone who understood what she'd been through. She suggested a video call tomorrow using an encrypted app with specific security settings she listed out. She mentioned she'd been keeping detailed records since 2021 when she first discovered her brother's involvement in her life falling apart. The relief of reading her words made me dizzy, and I had to sit down on my couch. Someone else knew exactly what this felt like, had lived through the same nightmare, and survived. I spent the next hour backing up every piece of evidence I had to 3 different cloud services using new accounts with strong passwords. The PI's report went into Google Drive, Dropbox, and OneDrive. The video confession got uploaded to each service plus a private YouTube account. All the screenshots and documents got organized into folders with clear labels and dates. Then I copied everything onto a USB drive that I'd take to the bank tomorrow for their safety deposit box. The paranoia felt completely justified now that I knew 3 other women had experienced the same calculated destruction. My phone rang and Mom's picture appeared on the screen. I answered despite knowing how it would go. Her voice broke immediately into tears, sobbing about how I was destroying our family with these horrible accusations against Liam. She kept repeating that he loved me, that he'd always tried to help me, that I needed to stop this craziness. Dad's heavy breathing came through the speaker, but he never said a word, just listened while Mom cried and begged me to apologize. When I tried to explain about the evidence, she just cried harder and said I was sick. The call ended with Dad finally speaking just to say enough before the line went dead. My laptop dinged with another email, this one from Nina Cartwright with the subject line, "Thank God someone else sees it." Her message included her phone number and said she was ready to talk whenever I wanted. She wrote that finding out about other victims made her feel less crazy for the first time in years. The validation in her words matched exactly how I felt reading Paula's response. We weren't alone anymore, and that changed everything. I opened a new browser window and started setting up an encrypted folder system where we could share evidence safely. Each woman would get her own section with password protection, plus a shared space where we could compile patterns and timelines. The technical setup took me 2 hours of researching security protocols and testing different platforms. I wanted something even Liam couldn't hack into if he tried. By the time I finished, it was past 11 at night. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, and when I opened it, Cecilia's name appeared at the bottom. She wrote that she hadn't slept well in months, waking up constantly to check if her accounts had been compromised again. Finding others who understood felt like waking from a nightmare, she said. She mentioned being good with computers and offered to help set up better digital security for all of us. Her brother worked in IT security, which explained how he'd been able to access her devices so easily. She'd learned to protect herself by studying the same techniques he used against her. The next morning, I sent everyone a Zoom link for 8 p.m. my time, giving us all day to prepare questions and gather evidence. I spent hours organizing my files into folders labeled by year and type of attack while drinking way too much coffee. When 8 o'clock came, I clicked the link with shaky hands and watched 3 faces appear on my screen one by one. Paula joined first from Portland, her dark hair pulled back and a notebook already open in front of her. Nina connected from Denver wearing a business suit like she'd just gotten home from work. Cecilia logged in last from Phoenix, the youngest at 22, but her eyes looked decades older. We all just stared at each other for a minute, taking in the shared exhaustion on our faces. Paula broke the silence by asking if we should start with timelines, and Nina immediately pulled up a spreadsheet she'd been working on. I shared my screen to show the evidence Angelo had found about Project Zero, while Cecilia typed notes faster than I'd ever seen anyone type. We went around sharing our worst incidents, and Paula asked really specific questions about methods and timing that helped us see patterns. Nina noticed something first when she said all our brothers used the exact same phrase about keeping us grounded. I pulled up Liam's recorded confession and played the part where he said he was protecting the family, and Paula gasped because her brother used those exact words. Cecilia checked her screenshots from the Facebook group and found dozens of posts about preventing disappointment and keeping sisters humble. The language was too similar to be coincidence, like they were all reading from the same playbook. Nina asked if anyone else's brother worked in tech or security, and we realized they all had jobs that gave them special access or knowledge. Cecilia told us she'd found 3 hidden cameras in her apartment after her brother visited last month, tiny things stuck behind picture frames. She'd also discovered he'd been intercepting her mail by filing a change of address form without her knowing. Nina's brother had done the same thing, plus he'd somehow gotten copies of her medical records from 3 different doctors. Paula's brother worked at a hospital and had looked up her records over 50 times according to the access logs she'd gotten through a privacy request. We spent 2 hours comparing notes, and the patterns kept getting clearer and scarier with every detail we shared. I brought up the idea of going to reporters since the police wouldn't help us, but Nina worried about her job if this went public. Paula said she'd already lost everything, so she didn't care about backlash, while Cecilia was scared, but thought publicity might be our only protection. We agreed to start documenting everything in a way that journalists could use, with clear timelines and verified evidence. After the call ended, I couldn't sleep and kept reviewing my notes until Angelo texted me at 2 a.m. He'd found a digital forensics expert named Graciela Shields, who specialized in family surveillance and stalking cases. Her website showed she'd worked on over 100 cases and had testified in court as an expert witness. The consultation fee was $500, but she offered payment plans for victims who couldn't afford it up front. I booked the earliest appointment available, which was 3 days away, and started preparing all my devices for her to examine. When Graciela called for our video consultation, she immediately asked me to show her my laptop while she walked me through some basic checks. Within 10 minutes, she'd identified programs running in the background that I'd never seen before. She explained these weren't just keyloggers, but sophisticated remote access tools that gave complete control of my devices. The spyware could activate my camera and microphone, track my location, read everything I typed, and even change files without me knowing. She said this level of surveillance required either advanced technical knowledge or expensive commercial software usually sold to governments. The programs had been installed over 4 years ago based on the file dates, right around when Liam visited for Thanksgiving. 2 days after my consultation with Graciela, I got an email from someone named Sabina Curtis saying she was an investigative journalist. The anonymous researcher had mentioned our case to her because she'd been investigating family abuse patterns for 2 years. Her previous articles had exposed stalking apps marketed to parents and spouses that were being used for illegal surveillance. She wanted to talk to us about our experiences, but promised to protect our identities until we were ready to go public. I forwarded her email to the group, and we had another call to discuss whether to trust her. Nina researched Sabina's previous work and found solid articles about domestic abuse and technology that showed she took victim safety seriously. Paula thought we should at least hear what she had to say, while Cecilia worried about losing control of our story. We agreed I'd do an initial call with Sabina to feel her out before making any commitments. When I talked to Sabina, she explained she needed at least 2 of us willing to go on record eventually, but would start with anonymous interviews. She said our case was different from typical domestic violence because it involved siblings and started in childhood. She'd already found similar cases that hadn't been connected before and thought this was a widespread problem nobody was addressing. While all this was happening, my former boss sent an email asking if I planned to sue the company for wrongful termination. His tone was nervous, and he mentioned wanting to resolve things quietly, which made me think their lawyers were worried. I forwarded it to Kieran Holloway, an employment attorney Paula had used when her brother got her fired from her nursing job. Kieran called me within an hour and said we definitely had grounds for a lawsuit based on the evidence of account tampering. He explained that proving the sabotage would be hard, but we could start with an unemployment appeal to establish a paper trail. The appeal would force my former employer to provide their evidence and potentially admit they'd found signs of hacking. That same afternoon, Paula suggested we start tracking everything in one place to see the bigger picture. She shared her screen during our video call and opened a blank spreadsheet with columns for dates, tactics used, and evidence we had. Nina typed while we all talked, adding rows for every single thing we could remember. The fake Instagram account that cost me volleyball went in first, then the Cornell essay frame-up, then every boyfriend who got weird messages. Cecilia added her stuff next, starting with hidden cameras in her apartment, and ending with her husband leaving after getting photos of her with another man who didn't exist. The spreadsheet grew to over 200 rows in just an hour. Paula sorted it by date, and we all went quiet seeing the pattern jump out at us. Every single major attack happened right before or during big life changes. College applications, job promotions, engagements, moves to new cities, every single time we were about to level up in life. Nina pointed at her screen showing clusters of attacks around graduation dates, wedding planning, and job interviews. The timing was too perfect to be random. While we were still looking at the data, my phone buzzed with a text from Liam asking how I was doing and if I wanted to grab coffee sometime. My hands shook a little as I took a screenshot without opening the message so he wouldn't see red receipts. This was his first contact since our video call where he admitted everything. I showed the others, and Paula said her brother did the same thing after she confronted him, acting casual like nothing happened. Cecilia said to save everything because these boundary tests were part of the pattern too. The next morning, Graciela called with updates from her deep scan of my laptop. She found something called remote access Trojans buried in system files from November 4 years ago. The programs let someone see everything on my screen, access my files, and even turn on my camera and microphone. She traced some of the connection logs, but the IP addresses went through proxy servers that would need court orders to track back to the source. The installation date matched exactly with when Liam visited for Thanksgiving that year and used my laptop to check his email. Graciela said she'd found similar programs on 3 other devices I'd sent her, all installed during times Liam had physical access. During our next group call, Nina mentioned something that made everything click into place. Her brother worked as a security consultant for banks, which explained how he knew about keyloggers and surveillance software. We went around sharing what our brothers did for work. Paula's brother was a family therapist who understood psychological manipulation. Cecilia's brother worked in law enforcement IT and had access to investigation tools. My brother Liam worked in corporate compliance where he learned about digital forensics and covering tracks. Every single one of them had picked careers that gave them the exact skills needed to destroy our lives. We weren't dealing with regular siblings being jerks, but with trained professionals using their expertise against us. That evening, I was making dinner when my phone started blowing up with family group texts. Mom had sent an email to 23 relatives saying I was going through mental health struggles and needed prayers. She wrote about my paranoid accusations against Liam and how I'd cut off contact with the family. The email made me sound completely unstable without mentioning any of the evidence I'd shown her. My aunts and uncles started replying with prayer hand emojis and offers to talk if I needed support. One cousin asked if I was seeing a therapist for my delusions. Dad added a comment about how hard this was on poor Liam, who only wanted to help his sister. The preemptive damage control was brilliant, because now if I tried to tell any of them the truth, they'd think it was part of my mental breakdown. Sabina started her interviews the next week, talking to each of us for about 2 hours on encrypted video calls. She asked detailed questions about specific incidents, wanting exact dates and any documentation we had. She was especially interested in Jeremy Blackwell's therapy notes and published papers about me. She said the professional misconduct angle could be huge if we could prove therapists were knowingly helping the abuse. Her questions were smart, and she caught connections we hadn't seen ourselves. She noticed our brothers all use similar phrases in their messages, and wondered if they'd found each other online somehow. She asked about childhood patterns and whether our parents had enabled the behavior from the start. With Paula, she focused on the medical school sabotage, and got names of admissions officers who might remember the incident. With Nina, she dug into the employment law violations and hostile work environment claims. With Cecilia, she explored the interstate stalking laws since her brother had followed her across 3 state moves. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from Jeremy Blackwell's office saying the doctor wanted to meet with me to discuss any misunderstandings about his published work. His secretary said he was concerned about false impressions and wanted to clarify things in person. I forwarded the message to Kieran right away. He called back within 10 minutes telling me absolutely not to meet without him present. He said Blackwell was probably trying to get me to say something he could use against me later or intimidate me into dropping any complaints. Kieran would respond formally requesting any meeting happen with legal counsel present and be recorded. That Thursday, Kieran helped me file for unemployment benefits with a thick folder of evidence about the false accusations. We included Graciella's forensic report showing the email was sent from my account using stolen credentials while I was asleep. We attached logs showing the IP address wasn't mine and evidence of the remote access programs. The unemployment office denied the claim 3 days later, saying termination for sending threatening emails wasn't eligible. Kieran had expected this and immediately filed an appeal with additional documentation about identity theft and unauthorized access. He said the appeal would force my former employer to provide their own evidence and explain their investigation process. Meanwhile, Cecilia had been digging into her brother's online activity and found something that made us all sick. She discovered a private Facebook group called Managing Difficult Sisters, with over 300 members. Her brother posted there regularly, sharing tips about installing tracking apps and creating fake social media accounts. Other members shared advice about psychological tactics and legal ways to maintain control. The group description talked about protecting family unity from selfish sisters who didn't understand their place. Cecilia took screenshots of everything she could see before her brother might notice and block her. We had a long debate about whether someone should try to join the group with a fake account to gather more evidence. Nina thought we could learn about new tactics and maybe identify other victims. Paola worried it was too risky and might tip them off that we were organizing. I thought about the legal implications since Kieran had warned against anything that could be seen as harassment. Cecilia had the deciding vote since she'd found the group, and she said it was too dangerous. Instead, she spent 3 hours screenshotting every single post, comment, and member profile she could access. She got over 400 screenshots before stopping, including detailed discussions about gaslighting techniques and recommendations for therapists who would support the brothers' perspectives. The group members talked about their sisters like we were problems to be solved, not people with our own lives. Emergency group meeting got called that same night after Cecilia shared the screenshots with everyone. We logged onto our secure video chat at 9 p.m. and started planning how to use this new evidence. Sabina said the Facebook group was exactly what her editor needed to show this was bigger than just us four. She wanted to time her article to drop the same week as our restraining order hearings, which were all scheduled for early May. Nina had her hearing on Monday, mine was Wednesday, and Paola's was Friday that same week. The coordinated timing would make it harder for judges to dismiss our cases as isolated incidents when the media was covering the pattern. Kieran helped me prep my testimony all weekend, going over every piece of evidence we'd collected. I practiced explaining the keyloggers Graciella found, the recorded confession where Liam admitted everything, and Angelo's documentation of the Project Zero journals. The morning of my hearing, I threw up twice from nerves but forced myself to eat toast and get dressed in the navy suit Kieran said would look professional. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, with wood paneling and fluorescent lights that made everyone look sick. Liam showed up with his own lawyer wearing his Yale tie like armor. I presented everything we had prepared, playing the recording where he said I was too smart and ambitious, and he kept me humble. The judge asked Liam if he wanted to respond, but his lawyer advised him not to speak. After 40 minutes of testimony, the judge granted a limited restraining order requiring Liam to stay 500 feet away and prohibiting any digital contact, including through third parties. It wasn't the full protection I wanted, but it was legal acknowledgement that something wrong had happened. That same afternoon, the unemployment office called saying they'd reviewed my appeal and approved both back benefits and ongoing support. The forensic evidence of account tampering had convinced them I was terminated due to criminal actions by a third party, not misconduct. The check would cover 3 months of back benefits plus ongoing support for up to 6 months while I looked for work. I cried in my car for 20 minutes after hanging up because it was the first time in months I could pay rent without panic. Thursday morning, Sabina's article went live on the news site with the headline, "The Brothers Who Wouldn't Let Go," and a photo of a computer screen showing surveillance software. She'd kept our names out but included enough detail that anyone who knew us would recognize the stories. Within 2 hours, it had 10,000 shares and climbing. My phone started buzzing with texts from old friends and coworkers who suddenly believed me. The Facebook group Cecilia found got flooded with people trying to join before the admins made it private. By noon, the article was trending on social media with people sharing their own stories of sibling abuse. Sabina called to say 3 more women had already reached out with similar experiences, and she was scheduling interviews. Friday afternoon, Jeremy Blackwell's university sent out a press release saying they were opening an investigation into his published papers about delusional sibling syndrome. Academic Twitter had been destroying him all day, pointing out ethical violations and the harm his work caused. Psychology professors were calling for his papers to be retracted and his license reviewed. The pressure got so intense that by evening he'd deleted his social media accounts, and his university profile showed on administrative leave. Monday morning, my former employer's legal team emailed Kieran offering to settle the wrongful termination issue quietly. They proposed $20,000 and a neutral reference but wanted a non-disclosure agreement. Kieran laughed and said we could do much better now that the media was watching. He countered with $50,000, confirmation in writing that I was a victim of cyberstalking, and no NDA so I could speak freely about what happened. They came back with $35,000 and everything else we asked for. While Kieran negotiated, our support group started talking about formalizing into an actual nonprofit to help other victims. Cecilia had already built a secure platform where people could share resources without fear of being monitored. She designed it with end-to-end encryption and verification systems to prevent infiltration. We filed the paperwork to become Phoenix Rising, focusing on technological abuse in family relationships. Nina would handle outreach, Paola would manage legal resources, Cecilia ran the technical side, and I coordinated survivor stories. The name felt right since we were all rebuilding from ashes. After Sabina's article published, my parents went completely silent. They didn't call to defend Liam or attack me or even acknowledge what happened. Mom's Facebook stayed frozen on a post from 3 weeks earlier about her garden. Dad's phone went straight to voicemail. The silence hurt worse than anger would have because it felt like they were pretending I didn't exist. Aaron had texted asking if I was okay after seeing the article, but I didn't respond. Some bridges weren't worth rebuilding. Tuesday, Kieran called to say my former employer accepted our terms and would send the settlement paperwork by end of week. The money would cover my legal fees, 6 months of expenses, and leave enough to actually save something. The neutral reference letter confirmed I was employed in good standing until the cyberstalking incident. It wasn't an apology, but it was enough to job hunt without the black mark. We spent Wednesday afternoon compiling our formal complaint to the psychology board about Jeremy Blackwell. The package included his therapy notes about Liam, the published papers using my life without consent, and testimony from all 4 of us about how his work enabled our brothers. Sabina added a statement about the Facebook group members citing his papers to justify their behavior. The board would take months to investigate, but at least the process was starting. Thursday morning, Graciela came to my apartment with 3 brand new devices still in their boxes. She spent 4 hours setting up my new laptop, phone, and tablet with security protocols I'd never heard of before. Each device had hardware authentication keys that looked like tiny USB drives. She installed monitoring software that would alert me if anyone tried to access my accounts from another location. She showed me how to run daily security checks that took less than 5 minutes. The routine felt good, like locking my door at night or checking my rearview mirror while driving. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with an email from someone named Dr. Rachel Park, who ran a biotech startup in Fremont. She'd read Sabina's article and wanted to meet about a contract position in her lab. Her message said she valued employees who documented everything and weren't afraid to stand up for themselves. The interview happened 2 days later in her office overlooking the ship canal. She asked about my experience at my last job and nodded when I explained the security measures I'd need. She offered me the position on the spot with flexible hours and full remote access privileges that I could monitor myself. Walking out of that building felt like breathing fresh air after being underwater for months. Aaron texted that weekend asking if we could meet for coffee. We sat at the same place where we'd had our first date 2 years ago. He told me he'd been thinking about everything since the article came out. He admitted Liam had called him multiple times after we started dating, planting doubts about my mental health. He apologized for not believing me and for leaving when I needed support most. We talked for an hour and agreed to part as friends with no plans to see each other again. The closure helped more than I expected. Sabina called Monday with news that made me sit down on my kitchen floor. Dozens of siblings had reached out since her article published with similar stories about brothers and sisters sabotaging their lives. She was working on a follow-up piece, and our group was discussing resources we could create. Paula had already drafted a guide for recognizing surveillance tactics. Nina was collecting legal templates for restraining orders. Cecilia suggested we might have grounds for a class action lawsuit against the Facebook group that shared stalking techniques. Wednesday brought an official letter from the psychology board about Jeremy Blackwell. They'd placed a formal expression of concern on all his publications pending their investigation. It wasn't removal yet, but it meant anyone citing his work would see the warning. His institution announced they were reviewing his research practices and patient consent procedures. The moving truck arrived Saturday morning for my planned relocation to a new apartment in Ballard. I'd found a place with better security, including a doorman and camera system. Only Paula, Nina, Cecilia, Sabina, and my new employer knew the address. The movers packed everything while I watched from my empty living room. This space had been contaminated by Liam's visit, and all the chaos that followed. The new apartment had hardwood floors and big windows facing west toward the water. Setting up my furniture in rooms Liam had never seen felt like reclaiming territory. Monday was my first day at the biotech startup. Dr. Park introduced me to the team of 8 researchers working on enzyme development. I explained my account security requirements during the IT setup, and nobody questioned it. The IT manager actually said it was smart, given how common corporate espionage had become. They gave me a dedicated workstation with biometric login that couldn't be accessed remotely. Every email I sent would be logged and time-stamped in a way I could verify. The work itself involved analyzing protein structures, something I'd loved since undergrad but never got to focus on before. That night, I sat at my new desk with the journal I'd started keeping after everything exploded. I wrote about how victory didn't mean defeating Liam or getting revenge or even full justice. Victory meant building a life he couldn't touch anymore. I had a job with people who respected my boundaries. I had an apartment he didn't know existed. I had a support network of women who understood exactly what I'd been through. Most importantly, I had documentation and security measures that meant nobody could gaslight me again. The daily security check on my devices had become a meditation of sorts. Every clean scan reminded me I was in control now. Every successful workday without mysterious complaints or account breaches proved I wasn't the problem. Every message from our support group showed I wasn't alone. Phoenix Rising was becoming more than just a name we'd chosen. We were literally rising from the ashes of the lives our siblings had tried to destroy. Thanks for sticking with me through all this. It's definitely been a journey worth sharing. Until we meet again, folks, if you made it to the end, drop a comment. I love reading all your comments.